Hello and welcome back to the Avoid the Tyrewall podcast. Today we're joined with a familiar face, Alisha. You should definitely go check out the first interview we did with her, but Alisha, do you want to do like an updated tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so hi everyone, and thank you Teagan for having me on the podcast again. I can't remember when we were last on actually. It seems like ages ago. I'm not sure what it actually was. It's been a long time. Um, I'm Alisha Palmowski. I'm 17 years old. I'm actually going to be 18 on Saturday. Shout out. Um, it's my first year in single seaters this year. I'm racing in the GB4 Championship. Um, I spent the last 2 years competing in Ginetta Juniors, so it's my third year overall on the car scene, racing in cars. And yeah, we've got one round to go at Brands Hatch at the end of the month, so really looking forward to it.
Since our last interview, like what has really changed, like drastically?
Yeah, so since our last interview, I've completed my second year in Ginetta Juniors and made the transition into single seaters. It was a great year for me last year in Ginetta Juniors. It was my second year, so I felt a lot more confident. I switched to Elite Motorsport as well. I think I just joined Elite when I spoke to you. So great group of people around me, obviously in the past multiple Ginetta Junior champions, so they really know the stuff, wealth of experience and knowledge. So great to work with them. I've worked closely with Chris Hodgetts, who's sort of my new mentor. He was a double touring car champion back in the 80s, so he's really helped bring me on as a driver and my mindset as well and my mental strength. So I've come on leaps and bounds in terms of how I am as a driver and my confidence. And then yeah, for this season, it's just a really quick overview. And then this season, obviously my first year in single seaters, I've stayed with Elite Motorsport, moving to Slicks and Wings for the first time. Huge step up, lots of differences. But it's been a great year so far. We're currently second in the championship. I've had 3 race wins, 2 pole positions, so it's been very successful. And I think if you'd have told me this time, sort of pre-season 8, 9 months ago, that we'd have had the year we've had, I won't believe you. It's been awesome, and I've really just enjoyed every second of it. So yeah, that's really just a really quick overview of what I've done for the last 2 years.
And do you think like staying with Elite Motorsports has helped you build confidence in your career?
I think so, to be honest. I think moving into this year, I'd established a relationship with everybody in the team. Felt really comfortable in the environment they provided on a race weekend. Obviously, the way they set the cars up, it really suits me. We've got a good relationship, and the feedback that I give to my engineers just all felt like a natural progression to move into single seaters and stay with Elite, stay with the same people that I know. They know my strengths and weaknesses as well, so they could, instead of needing to go through a pre-season testing program to identify what those were, they knew from the get-go, so we knew what to focus on. And they've helped me develop as a driver all round and continue the progress that we've been making since the start of last year. So yeah, it was just really natural for me, and it's been a great year to stay with them again.
So, how have you found driving the slicks and wings style of the GB4 cars compared to that of the Ginetta Juniors?
I think it's really cool. Firstly, I think if you ask any sort of young child, 5, 6 years old, to draw a racing car, they'll probably draw a single seater. So just to have the opportunity to be in a effectively an F4 car is just something I never ever dreamt of. So it's a huge opportunity for me. But it is very different to what I've done previously in the Ginetta Junior. I say it all the time in all my interviews, but predominantly the biggest difference is being on slick tyres compared to being on road tyres in the Ginetta Junior. There's just so much more grip, but also you've got to make an effort and work a lot harder to generate heat in the tyres and brakes, which I'd never had to do in Ginetta Juniors. So that was a huge learning curve for me to get my head around, which I managed to do now quite well. But yeah, also Ginetta Juniors, they're just very naturally designed to be a very loose car to teach your car controllers. Obviously, it's a learning series, 14 to 17-year-olds. So it's an incredibly difficult car to drive. I think it's probably underestimated how difficult the Ginetta Junior is. So the car control that's equipped me with, that's directly translated over to the single seater. So I was able to get to grips with it really quickly because although it's 10 times quicker, there's 10 times more grip, as I mentioned, with the downforce that we've now got. But also one of the big differences is actually that I've noticed quite recently, especially in the hotter temperatures. As I say hot, like 20 degrees in England, we're buzzing. When you follow another car closely behind in a race, the dirty air from the car in front actually makes it really difficult to follow, which obviously we've all heard about in the likes of Formula One. And I know it's obviously to a much lesser extent that it affects us, but it still does affect. And a lot of understeer actually comes into the car during the high speed corners in a single seater, which didn't at all affect in Ginetta Junior. So they're the really biggest differences, but I've learned a lot and got to grips with it quite quickly.
At Donington, I was like given the opportunity to like go in the Ginetta hospitality, which I was like,
Mm-hmm.
like panicking. But we got to sit in the race car, and the man was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, you should press the brake." Is the brake like similar in the GB4 car? Because it's like obviously it's very hard to press.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I think a lot of people obviously wouldn't, if you'd never sat in a race car, you wouldn't realise. But there's no servo on race car brakes, which basically means it's nothing like a road car. So obviously, a road car, you don't press it hard at all, but it does move the pedal. Whereas in a race car, which you'll probably felt, it's pretty much like putting your foot up against a brick wall, and it's all about pressure, how much force you can put on the pedal. So you need a strong left leg. So in the gym, my left leg's strong, my right leg's a bit rubbish, but that's fine. But yeah, so that's a big difference. But it's pretty much the same in the Ginetta Junior as it is in the GB4 in terms of the brake, how it feels. It's just the pressure's a lot more in the GB4. In a Ginetta Junior, you're looking at around 35 bars of pressure, I think, from memory. Whereas now you're looking at around 115, 120. So it's a big step up. But similar idea, same sort of idea.
Do you feel you've had to adapt your driving style at all from going from the Ginettas to the GB4? Like you mentioned the understeer and stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a bit of both, to be honest, a bit 50-50. I think what I learned in terms of, like I said before, in terms of the car control from Ginetta Juniors, that's helped me massively go into the single seater. And it is the exact same. Whenever there's a snap of oversteer, I just know how to react, how to control the rear, um, which I've totally learned, and full credit to Ginetta Junior for that. But I think as a driver now in single seaters, I found that I don't know why, it was pretty much from the get go, but I'm a much smoother driver now than I ever was in Ginetta Juniors. And I think obviously that's a huge benefit, having slick tyres, trying to make sure you don't overheat the tyres, don't wear the tyres excessively or more than you need to. So yeah, I'd say just my smooth driving style, because you really have to hustle a Ginetta Junior round. Really, they're such difficult cars. You never really know what they're going to do. You're going into every corner. They're pretty much. I always say they've got a mind of their own. That those cars are very difficult. Whereas a single seater, I'm just much smoother. A bit like Jensen Button, I like to say I'm a little bit like that's who I compare my driving style to. So yeah, I'd say that's the biggest difference I've had to make, really.
How do you prepare mentally for and physically for race weekends, given the level of competition in GB4?
Yeah, that's another good question. I think again, going back to one of the biggest differences from Ginetta Junior to a single seater in general and GB4, it is a lot more physically demanding, I found. And to be totally honest, in pre-season testing, I wasn't strong enough. I was coming out the car and my arms were dead. They're fatigued. They were gone. So I thought, right, we've got to step up my gym routine here. I've got to, make a change about this, sort this out. So I'm just spending a lot of time in the gym, and that's pretty much my new job, gym and sim. Um, spend all free time in there. But not only your arms. I mean, I mentioned the brake pressure as well. How hard you need to hit the brake. I think 110 bars is about equivalent to 110 kilograms, so it's a lot of force. But also neck strength as well. And obviously, it's again, you're hearing Formula One about all the neck strength with all the G forces. We're not at all to that level, to that extent. It's on a much smaller basis, but the principality is still the same of the forces on your neck, which I never had to deal with in Ginetta Juniors, because pretty much your whole body's strapped in, but your neck can still move. So I had to do a lot of work on my neck, making sure that strength's okay and I can actually hold my head up in the car. So at the start, it was pretty much, you might have seen the onboards from like Oliver Bearman from Saudi Arabia in Jeddah. When towards the end of the race, his neck was completely gone. Yeah, so it was a similar idea like that for me. So I've worked a lot on that. It's a lot stronger now, in a much better position. And mentally, to be honest, I haven't really done much different to any other years that I've done. In terms of preparation, I just feel way more confident in this car than I ever have before. I just totally feel at home. I'm just loving driving the single seater, just really happy. And I have this new inner belief in myself that I can do it and I can do a good job whenever I go out on track. So I think having that inner belief and confidence in turn helps your mindset and helps your mentality going into a race. So I think there's nothing that I do that's special in particular. It's just a general feeling that I've got that helps me cope with the pressure and nerves.
Very nice. So obviously you have transitioned to the single seater ladder. Do you see yourself going down that route, like I don't know, to like F1 Academy or GB3 or like that way, or like going to do something different?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just loving single seaters, and I never, as I mentioned before, I never thought I'd ever have the opportunity to even race one. So, to be in one this year is just absolutely amazing, and I would love to stay in single seaters, and that will be the plan for next year at least. Obviously, I want to progress up the single seater ladder as high as possible. Obviously, Formula One is the eventual dream and hope that I guess every young driver says, but being realistic as well. I think if I can make it as far as possible, nothing ever stops me from then potentially falling back into a GT car of some sort, whatever that may be for a career. And I think there's so many different series, so many different opportunities, and you see that a lot. I think actually with single seaters going back into different categories. I think it's quite rare that you see it the other way, sort of GT car drivers going to single seaters. I think that's quite rare. But if you go single seaters, I think that opens up so many opportunities that you can virtually go anywhere. So yeah, I don't know long term, but short term, definitely I'll be staying on the single seater ladder.
Could you do like IndyCar? I mean, that's quite far to move, but
No,
how's it?
but absolutely, there's so many different things, so many different options. So I've just got to perform, deliver the results, and then hopefully opportunities will come.
Do you have any racing superstitions?
This is a really funny one actually, because it's not a normal one. Like I hear people say, "Oh, I have to put my left boot on first, or I always get in from the right hand side of the car." I've got nothing like that at all, and I don't even know where this has come about. But on not actually on race days, but on test days or yeah, just test days, practice days for a weekend or just one-off individual events. When you sign on, they give you a wristband to say that you are the driver for that day, so that the marshals check the wristband before you go out on track. And that's got a number on it that's sort of specific to you. So if you go off on track, if you cause a red flag or you go into the gravel or have a problem, break down, you have to read your number to a marshal and they make a note of that number, that it was you basically that's gone off and caused disruption to the day. And if you go off, I think more than twice with your wristband number, then you get a sin bin for the day and you lose 30 minutes of track time or something. So I've got the superstition that I cannot read my number until the end of the day. It sounds really weird, but I noticed a trend, especially at the start of like 2022 in the first year. If I got my wristband and I read the number straight away, I'd crash or I'd go off because I knew the number. And then when the marshal came over, I didn't even need to look at my wristband because I knew the number and I'd tell them. Whereas now, if I don't look at the number, then I won't need to read it out. So at the end of every day, if it's gone well, I look down at my wristband and I read the number and then I take it off. So there you go. That was a really long-winded story, really irrelevant, but now you know.
That's that's probably the randomest one I've heard.
Yeah, there you go.
So obviously you've had a very successful season, but can you tell us about a frustrating moment this season and how you overcame it?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this earlier because obviously motorsport's full of highs and lows for everybody. But I think one of the most toughest moments of this year was actually at Alton Park in race 3, the reverse grid race. We'd had such a good race one. Obviously, I won the opening round of in my debut of the opening round of the championship. But I started on the back row for the reverse grid race because I qualified second. So I was starting 13th, and I'd made my way all the way up to, I think I was running in fourth and I was overtaking for third. And while I was alongside the third place driver, I was around the outside going into Cascades and we made contact, went off into the mud and DNF'd and didn't finish the race. And it was actually Linus Granfors who was behind me, who's now the championship leader. He went on to win that race and he was behind me when I crashed. So I do genuinely believe that was a race victory that we lost there through that contact. But it was especially hard to take because it went down as a racing incident in the end. Obviously, I've got my own opinion of what I think happened and all that sort of thing. But it was very much 50-50, the feedback that I was hearing from not just people within the team, but messages outside of fans and people watching on. Some people were saying, "Oh, absolutely not your fault. You couldn't have done anything differently. I'd have done the same thing if I was there in that car." And equally, some people were saying, "No, 100% it was you. You should have preempted what was going to happen and put your car in a different position and been more sensible in a way." So that was really hard for me because I sort of was convincing myself that, oh, it wasn't my fault. Couldn't have done anything. Just wrong place, wrong time. And then somebody would tell me, "Oh, 100% it was you." So that was hard. But I think I sort of came out of it stronger because I sort of settled on the fact that it probably wasn't my fault in that specific situation, but I can also learn from it for future events because the whole objective of being in GB4 this year for me was just to learn, to make mistakes and to grow from them and become a better all-round driver, which I think looking back now, that event definitely has made me a better driver, helped my judgment, especially for reverse grid races when the risk is higher. But then again, it does still hurt a little bit, especially now that we're coming towards the end of the championship, because those points that I lost, that we won't know until the end of Brands Hatch, but that could have potentially cost me a championship. So it is tough, but then again, I have learned from it. So it's one of those. It's 50-50, but yeah.
Do you think like GB4 should introduce like anti-stall? Because I know that several people have probably stalled on the grid.
Yeah,
So,
me included.
oops.
Yes, that.
Do you think they should introduce anti-stall?
That's a good question. Nobody's ever asked me that actually. Half of me says yes because that would have helped me. I had actually two stalls earlier on in the year, which was not my proudest moment. Looking back now, I mean, I've learned a lot from it, and I don't stall anymore. My starts are quite good, so it's taught me, if nothing else. Um, so 50% of me says yes because that would have saved me from the embarrassment of that situation, saved me the championship points. But then equally, I think maybe no because it teaches us how to do the starts, and you've got to persevere and make sure you're getting them right so you don't become lazy then. I suppose. Yeah, it's a tricky one, but yeah, one of those things.
I don't know if you watched the F2 feature race in Azerbaijan.
Yes,
Do
yes,
you
I saw that.
think they should have anti-stall in the higher levels, like F3, F2?
Yes, to be honest, yes. I think to avoid because obviously the speeds are a lot higher, and obviously that was a horrific crash, and they're just very fortunate. I think that everybody came out of that okay. I think for the lower categories like Formula 4, what we're in, which is a learner championship, it's the first rung of the single seater ladder. I think it's okay not to because the consequences might not be as severe. Obviously, it's never ideal. You never want to crash. I'm not saying that, but you've got to persevere to learn. So then in the higher categories, you know what you're doing basically. But yeah, I agree in the higher categories where it's more risky. Definitely, I agree.
Yeah, because like obviously the GB4 cars are a lot slower than the F2.
Yeah,
So
mm-hmm.
you're carrying more speed and more traction, aren't you? If you're coming from like
Exactly.
second and you smack 10th,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's quite the position you're in, but that's the
No,
general.
exactly. Mm-hmm.
Um, can you talk about being a BRDC Rising Star and like how it helped your career and how you got involved in it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for me, being a rising star in the BRDC is such a huge opportunity, and it was a shock for me to be honest. I heard at the start of this year that they'd chosen me to join the Rising Star program, and I mean the caliber of drivers that are in the BRDC or the Rising Stars program or the Superstars program, it's such a high caliber. So to be amongst those names at such an early stage in my career, it's only my first year in single seaters. I didn't expect to ever be associated with the BRDC this early on, really. So huge opportunity for me. I went to Silverstone to the British Grand Prix this year with the BRDC. The people I met were crazy. Honestly, you just walk into the BRDC clubhouse at Silverstone, and you've got sort of David Coulthard, Johnny Herbert, and just all these names. Martin Brundle's just stood there. It's just absolutely crazy. It's all these people you see on TV just stood next to you in the same club. So to have my name even associated with some of them is just a huge privilege, and I'm just honoured and so grateful to the BRDC for the opportunity.
What drew you towards the GB4 Championship rather than something like British F4 or Italian Formula 4?
Yeah, to be totally honest, budget. It's got to come down to budget at the end of the day. I don't know how aware other people, maybe from the outside that aren't involved in motorsport, know about the prices, but GB4 is around a third of the price of a year in British F4 or Italian F4. I think British F4 you're probably looking at 450,000 to 500,000 at least. I'd say. I mean, I don't know exactly. Obviously, it varies from team to team. Whereas GB4 you're looking at a third of that price. So that's ultimately what it came down to. Um, but also the fact that I was able to stay with Elite Motorsport as well. Obviously, they haven't got a British F4 team; they've got a GB4 team. Just seemed like a natural progression for me. Still getting to race on all the same tracks that British F4 do. Very similar car, just for a much lesser price. So full credit to Jonathan Palmer, MSV, everybody involved for GB4 for that, because without GB4, I'd have never ever signed a single seater. It really is as simple as that. I would have had to go to a GT car route of some sort, maybe, or maybe not even been on a grid. So I'm just so grateful to the whole everybody at GB4 for even creating the championship and giving people like me the chance to race a single seater who otherwise wouldn't have.
I did hear somewhere that certain drivers in Italian Formula 4 were spending over £1 million or £1 million
Yeah,
on a season, which
mm-hmm.
is insane. Like,
It's immense. It is crazy. There's no other sport like it. It is crazy.
yeah, I think it's like funny on TikTok when you see like all these like horse riders and like these swimmers and they're like, what's the most expensive? Like,
Yeah,
no, you're wrong.
like you don't realize. Yeah.
What, in your opinion, is the best circuit and what makes it so special?
That's a really good question again. I was thinking about this earlier, and I don't know necessarily if I'd say it's the best circuit, but it's the one that I love the most and do quite well at. I've got to say Snetterton, which is it's sort of really random, and actually it does change my favourite circuit. I think it really depends if you do well or not. So if I went to Snetterton tomorrow and did really badly, I'd tell you I hate it. So it really depends. But we had a great weekend at Snetterton this year. I got a double pole position, 2 race wins in a second. So it's been a successful track for me, and I just really enjoy driving it. I think there's such a great combination of high speed corners, low speed corners, um, tight hairpins. Then you've got Coram at the end of the lap, which I think is one of the most difficult corners probably in the country. Really long, fast right hander. So it's a real challenge as a driver as well, trying to get the setup, because with the high and low speed, it's trying to sort of find a happy medium between where do you want the balance to be. Do you want traction or do you want high speed grip? It's like all these different factors to contest with. But no, I just really enjoy Snetterton. So yeah, I'd say that it'd be quite interesting actually. I'm going to rewatch our old podcast and see. You probably asked me that question. See, I bet I said the same thing actually. I've always liked Snet. I'll have to have a look.
I feel like Snet's like Marmite, like you either love it or you hate it because like
Yes,
half the people I would
absolutely.
say hate it. Like
Hmm.
it's probably the most hated. Justice for Snetterton.
Probably. Oh well, I'm here to love Snetterton.
Yes.
Snetterton fan club right here.
I have seen on socials that you do still do work with Ginetta. Do you think that such a close relationship has helped your development?
Absolutely. I feel like I owe a lot to Ginetta through their junior scholarship. I mean, that's the only way that we could make the transition from carts into cars. Without that scholarship, I'd have never even sat in a race car, let alone now being a single seater here talking to you. Um, and I just really can't find the words to really thank Lawrence and everybody at Ginetta enough for putting their belief in me and giving me the opportunity to win that scholarship and to race in the junior championship. I think it's such a cool brand. There's such a great group of people, um, and the cars as well. The championship. I think there's no better sort of development championship than Ginetta Juniors for young drivers. I think what that teaches you is just incredible, and you only have to look at the alumni from Ginetta Juniors to see the caliber and what a great championship it is. So yeah, whenever the opportunity comes to work for Ginetta, I grab it. I absolutely go for it. I love all the people, love working with them. And yeah, I think it was last month actually. We did an event both at the factory in Leeds and also at Blyton Park, which is their test facility. I was driving a Ginetta GTP and GTA car. I was doing some coaching for some content creators who hadn't had much track time before. It was one of their first times ever on a race circuit. So that was really cool for me to sort of pass on some of the experience and knowledge that I've gained over the last 3 years on the car scene, and also to be with Ginetta as well, to try and just to say thank you to them for giving me the opportunity and believing in me, really. So that was really cool experience for me.
What is one thing that you haven't yet achieved that you would like to do?
I think it sounds silly, but win a championship. It's crazy. I've been in motorsport for like 7, 8 years now, but I've never actually won a championship. It's crazy. I've come second like 1,000,001 times. I've come second in nearly every championship I've entered. But I've never actually won a championship. I've come very close before, but for various different reasons. Sometimes my mistakes, sometimes various other factors. We've just never managed to actually win one. Hopefully this year could be the year. It is a long shot, but we'll give it everything at Brands Hatch and see what can happen. Um, but yeah, I mean, I won the Ginetta Junior Scholarship. Obviously, I became the Ginetta Junior Scholarship champion, but it's not really a championship. It's a little bit different. So that's really my aim. It sounds quite silly, and I am quite embarrassed that it hasn't happened yet, because we've come so close. But that is the aim. We'll keep working towards that.
Well, as George Russell says, consistency is key, and you've been very consistent.
Exactly. P2, P2, P2. That's it.
So you work closely with Sarah Moore. Do you think her experience, obviously in W Series and many other things, has helped you to develop and build your confidence?
100%. I absolutely love Sarah. She's brilliant. I think she sort of brings two aspects to engineering, really, to working closely with me. Because obviously from racing in W Series, she's been in motorsport for a very long time. She's actually somebody who I used to watch. I think I went to Silverstone, the British Grand Prix in 2021 when she was racing in W Series. I sat in the Maxim Brackets grandstand and just watched her go around. So to be working with her now, it's amazing. It's like I'm in a dream. It's like I can't believe I'm actually amongst these people. But yeah, the experience she's got of car setup and all that knowledge side of it, obviously that exceeds mine at this current stage. She knows a lot more than I do. So in terms of the feedback that I give her and in terms of how the car's behaving, we work really well, sort of speak the same language, and she's able to try and give me a better car. But also being a female in the sport and being a racing driver as well, she can totally relate with the position that I'm in. You know, she started in Ginetta Juniors actually the same as me, so she had a very similar career. And yeah, we just have an appreciation for each other and understand each other. So I think that's what might make her unique as an engineer compared to maybe some others who I know some engineers aren't racing drivers, they're just engineers, which I'm not undermining at all. Obviously, they're extremely clever people, much cleverer than I'll ever be. But it's great that Sarah's sort of got an understanding of what I'm doing, and from every aspect, really, not just the car setup. She understands where my head's at pre-race. She knows the nerves. She just understands every single dealing with the media. She just understands every aspect of it. So yeah, it's been great to work with her this year.
Thank you for watching this week's episode of the Avoid the Tyrewall podcast, and thank you to Alisha for doing this interview. See you next week. Bye.